Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar. The Rising FMs are hosting today's event, which is to basically celebrate and develop or celebrate the topic on developing apprenticeships within the profession. And today we have a panel of speakers. We have Linda Houseman, Mark Whitaker, Ed Fletcher, and also George Carter, all obviously with very strong backgrounds within facilities management. But today we'll be talking about the value of apprenticeships within the workplace and experiences that individuals have had during that time. So before I hand you over to Elliot Valentine, who's today's interviewer, also from Rising FMs, he's a committee member. We'll have a brief introduction from each of our panel speakers just to tell you a bit about themselves and why they're here today. So Linda, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. Linda Houseman is CEO of IWFM. I'm particularly passionate about apprenticeships. For anybody who knows me, previous to me being the CEO, I was the Director of Professional Development for the Institute, obviously both IWFM and BIFM, and therefore I have been instrumental in the development of qualifications and apprenticeships in FM. So look forward to speaking to you shortly.
And Mark?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the invitation, really. So my day job, I'm a consultant general manager here at Taunton FM, an FM consultancy. Most of you probably be aware as well that from October of last year, I became chair of IWFM. I've previously, for the last 10 years, been involved in regional volunteering, particularly here in the North region, and was involved in being a non-exec director as well for 2 years prior to becoming chair. Again, sharing Linda's passion of apprenticeships and the need to develop and train people within the profession, and is one of the reasons why I've been so heavily involved in the Career with Choice initiative and the collaboration with Class of Your Own that we've been trying to do for the last 2 years in terms of speaking with young people and selling the benefits of the careers in facilities management so that it can bring fresh new talent into the industry. So that's my background. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And Ed?
Afternoon, even everyone. Thanks again for the invitation. So I'm a sales director in soft services with the Tannin Servest. And I think, my journey really into FM was a little bit of, I kind of fell into FM, but then used structured learning programs to advance my career. So really, I've been asked to join today from that personal perspective of how they can help accelerate your career. But also, I've seen many other really talented people come through apprenticeships programs, and I'll be touching on that a bit later.
Thank you, Ed. And last but not least, George.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm George Carter. I'm a facilities assistant at Nomura. I started the IWFM Level 3 apprenticeship in 2017. After graduating from that, I moved on to start the Level 4 apprenticeship, which I'm currently in the endpoint assessment of. So I'm looking forward to speaking about my experiences going through the 2 programs today.
Thank you so much. And just to make you aware that we will have an opportunity for questions to be asked. You should have seen a notification on screen to allow you to type any questions that you may have, and we'll have answered later on. If you do have a question for a specific speaker, please do not forget to mention their name. But now I'll introduce you to Elliot Valentine, who's today's interviewer, and we can start our discussions. Elliot, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to National Apprenticeship Week with the IWFM. So thank you for everybody for tuning in with us today. So we're going to run through some questions for each of our panelists. So our first question goes to Mark. Is your role as IWFM chair and also as an FM consultant, what has the perception of apprentices in the industry been?
Thanks, Elliot. I think from an industry point of view, I think the whole issue of apprenticeships could be a significant solution to a lot of the issues that we have and historically have had within the sector. So if I break it down just briefly in terms of the industry point of view, from an employer's point of view, and also from the people development point of view, I suppose from an industry point of view, we've been talking for years and years and years, even before probably I had grey hair, about the demographic time bomb within facilities management and the need to address that, and the fact that we need some fresher talent coming into the industry, but also that we've got this skill shortage coming, and that we need a more diverse and potentially younger age range of people coming into the profession. So apprenticeships could be the solution, or been seen to be that solution to that issue. I suppose from an employer's point of view, there's a real need, which has been really heightened really over the last 6 months, I would say, of developing and retaining good people, and apprenticeships and going through the different levels of qualification within FM are a means to do that. But it's a significant investment that needs to be done by employers to retain their people, to develop them and to invest in them. And I suppose from a people point of view, really, the apprenticeship schemes are an excellent means to develop their knowledge. And I suppose coming back to a point that George made just a minute ago, is that clear career path for individuals potentially coming into the industry, that they can, but it is a career of choice, like I mentioned previously, and not of chance, like talked about, as they know the path that they go down and the different levels that they need to go down. So in short, really, I think the way that apprenticeships are, it could solve a lot of the issues that we are experiencing and need to start planning for the future, really.
Mark. So my second question is for Linda. Have you seen the uptake in apprentices improve over the years, and how has the IWFM helped support the growth and development of apprentices in the industry?
Thanks, Elliot. I'll tackle the development of apprentices first, and then I will talk about the growth, because obviously IWFM, as the professional body, certainly in the last 15 years that I've been there, has worked with employers to develop the apprenticeships. So for each level, so we've got apprenticeships at levels 2, 3, 4, and 6. And what's had to happen, you had to create the standards for each of those levels. So you bring together employers, individuals, academics, and we appointed a professional standards writer to write the standards. So when we have been doing that, say, for 15 years. So we've done that. Now, what have we done to support the growth in that? We've developed the supporting growth, because obviously as a regulated Ofqual body, we have worked with recognised centres who deliver the apprenticeships. So IWFM does not deliver the apprenticeships, so the centres do. So we've grown those. So I think we've got over 15 recognised centres throughout the country who deliver the apprenticeships. And what growth have we seen? Obviously, I mean, George mentioned it just now when he started in 2017. We have seen a steady increase year on year of a number of people undertaking apprenticeships. I don't have the numbers for the whole of the nation. Obviously, I can only see the numbers that are coming through the IWFM qualifications and apprenticeships. But from early acorns, we're seeing those grow and increase year on year and across all the levels. The thing I'd mention now just quickly, what I'm absolutely delighted about is in January this year, we've got our first cohort of degree apprenticeships in FM being delivered by University of Bolton. So the future for FM looks very, very good.
Thank you, Linda. That sounds really, really positive. George, what attracted you to an apprenticeship within facilities management?
Thanks, Elliot. When I was leaving my previous job, I kind of knew that whatever I was going to was going to involve certain aspects of learning, whether that was going to be an apprenticeship or going to university. For me, university wasn't the route I wanted to go down. I wanted to continue getting job experience. So for me, going on to an apprenticeship and being able to learn a useful qualification at the same time as getting a job experience, I thought would put me in a stronger position when moving forward. I think in terms of why I chose FM, the skill set that I had developed from my previous roles meant that it was a very good fit for me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, George. Ed, within your organisation, how have you seen apprenticeships develop?
So I think I've just actually become aware that we're coming up to the 5th anniversary of the introduction of the apprentice levy. And I think in my career, I think that's made a real impact. So I think really what apprenticeships offer now is they're able to, and they do, replace a lot of the structured learning programs that FM organisations might have embarked upon themselves. So in a question later, I'll discuss a bit about my journey and the type of courses I was on. But I think nowadays they would probably be apprenticeships. So I think some of the main changes I've seen is that apprenticeships are now taken up at all age levels. And that's kind of removed the stigma of the fact that, you know, if you sort of go back 10 years, an apprentice was seen as maybe a newbie, a rookie on a construction site or whatever, that kind of thing. And that kind of stigma of someone inexperienced and is a derogatory term, I think has been completely changed. And I think now that it's a much more positive thing. So, you know, if in an organisation you say, I've got a new apprentice starting, people think, okay, that's fantastic. That's a really good method of filling skills gaps, as Mark says, and giving people the opportunity in our careers. So I think definitely you see a lot more apprenticeships. I think and as I say, I think the levy for me, being involved in the industry, is largely behind that.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. Have you also found that customers are wanting to see their supply chain commit to apprenticeships, and has this been written into any contracts?
Yeah, so I think this kind of falls into the bracket of social value, and I think we all know in our industry at the moment social value is incredibly important to our clients. Has it become more of a selection criteria in bids and tenders? 100%. I know both in the public sector, obviously, where I guess that it was more prevalent earlier on, but both in the public sector and the private sector, social value is very much a key criteria that organisations select their FM partner on. So, I think there are some sort of targets. It can be number of apprenticeship places, but I think social value is a broader kind of subject, and therefore it might be organisations looking for a certain number of volunteering hours, a certain level of employment from the local area, maybe from disadvantaged backgrounds, that kind of thing. And I think apprenticeships play a really, really important role in there. But I think they go beyond just the narrow kind of, the social value bracket. I think, as I say, I think they offer opportunities to people of all backgrounds, at all ages and all levels of their career, as well as just kind of that social value piece.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Linda, what are the best ways for an FM organisation to access apprenticeship schemes?
Thanks, Elliot. Picking up on what Ed was just saying, for an FM organisation, are they a levy payer or not? If they're a levy payer, obviously their finance directors, certainly their HR people, should be absolutely all over this, making sure, because they're paying that money into that levy, regardless of whether they are using the apprenticeship scheme. For non-levy payers, I always urge you also can use the apprenticeship scheme, and you pay 5% towards. So giving you an example, there's an apprenticeship at a level 7, a strategic leadership apprenticeship, £14,000. For a non-levy paying company, you'd only pay £700 towards that. So non-levy paying companies should absolutely be looking at their staff, especially at the moment, because everybody must be aware of the skills gap that we have got, not just in FM, but across all sectors, all industries. And apprenticeships are a fantastic way of developing staff. So all companies should be looking at what skills they actually need in their organisation. Everybody's at flight risk at the moment. The great resignations going on. So everybody's at flight risk. So therefore, start planning for these things. Start planning for the people who you think are at flight risk. How are you going to replace them? Because you can either recruit an apprentice, or you have existing people that you think, actually, if I develop them, picking up on what Ed just say, that misnomer about an apprentice is like, oh, well, you're a hairdresser, or are you going to be a bricklayer on a building site? That's gone. Because what we have done, certainly this is the role that we have played as an institute, is making sure there's parity. So there is no now sort of shame to being an apprentice, to being a graduate. There has to be absolute parity in that learning, in that outcome, so that regardless of whether you have grown up through an apprenticeship route or whether you left school and went to university and got a degree, you should be the same. You should be seen as the same. And there has been a snobbery in Britain for many, many years. And you don't see it, certainly in European countries, where to be an apprentice, there's absolute pride there. And that's what we've done with these standards in getting those levels up. So to any company, obviously levy payers will be very much on this now, I hope, and I suspect, but non-levy paying companies, go on to the Institute of, I hope you've got your pens available, Institute for Apprenticeships, look at the all the levels, look at all the job profiles, etc., and see what apprenticeships are available. You know, data analyst. Most companies are needing sort of greater data analysts and scientists in their organisations, regardless of what type of company they are. So that's what I would recommend. But everybody should have a talent management strategy and making sure that apprenticeships are part of it. As an employer, I take on apprenticeships. I have a moral duty to sort of make sure that the young people and the FMs and business administrators and business leaders of the future have a good start in life. So use an apprenticeship.
Brilliant, thank you, Linda. There's some good advice and information there. So I hope people, do log on to the apprenticeship website and actually have a look at that. George, how have you found your apprenticeship and general induction to FM?
Thanks, Elliot. I found both to be very, very good, extremely beneficial. When I started at Namura, instantly was assigned a mentor who has helped me every step of the way. I've lent on them with every little question I've had to ask, which has been especially helpful during the last year. Studying during COVID wasn't a particularly straightforward situation, but combining the support of my mentor and my general team, it's been a brilliant experience.
Brilliant, thank you, George. Mark, how can IWFM in the industry support apprentices to ensure they develop further?
Thanks, Elliot. There's a few aspects to this, I would say. If we kind of take it right back, I suppose, it's having those conversations like I talked earlier on about, having those conversations really, really early with people. I'll just kind of hark back to a telephone call I had on Sunday night a few months ago, and it was parents of some friends of my son, and they didn't want to go down the university route, but had been talking about apprenticeships, and he wanted to know a bit more about apprenticeships and facilities management, and a bit more information about that. And I suppose from an IWFM point of view, it's so important that we are that professional, distinctive voice out there that are giving that guidance to professionals as to what the next steps are, really. And if you go looking at kind of the journey for the apprentices, 75% of employers do offer full-time roles upon completion of apprenticeships, which is, an important three-quarter statistic, really. But it's for those apprenticeships and people coming through them as well as to where they can then develop. It doesn't stop with the apprenticeship. It's that constant learning, and I think the Institute plays an important part of that. I mentioned before about, as did Linda, about kind of the different levels 2, 3, 4, and now 6, for example, at the University of Bolton, like Linda mentioned. So it's that kind of encouragement and accessibility of further qualifications to develop their skills. I think aligned to that, and something that the Institute has really focused on, is equipping people with the information and tools to help them in their roles. So the insight and research outputs that for quite some time now have been produced by Peter Brogan and the team at IWFM are a really key part of that. I remember years ago being involved in the first winter maintenance good practice guide, and how that was the first of its kind within the industry. So it's that professionalisation and equipping people with the tools, I think, is really important. I think it's encouraging employers to get involved to work with schools and to offer apprenticeships. and develop those talents at a really early stage and spotting that potential, but understanding that through nurturing and developing that talent, they're equipping themselves with the workforce of the future, really. And just aligned to a point that Linda also made, really, I think it's really, really important that all organisations take an internal look at the people within them and look and spot the talent where they can think they can develop them. And I think by close alignment to IWFM, it's that opportunity there of investing in people development that is so crucial for retention, but also for people potentially joining organisations. It can be referenced about what the people are developed within that particular organisation as well. So I think that's really important. And an ongoing side of things, what the Institute's doing, you know, a lot of what the Institute are doing, for example, in offering endpoint assessments for levels 2, 3 and 4 as well is something that, again, IWFM are heavily involved in being able to do, really, in supporting people through the professional development. So it's really, really important in all aspects of it that we're offering that kind of helping hand to individuals and organisations that want to develop the people, really.
Thank you, Mark. In the eyes of the IWFM and your experience, what is it that makes a good apprenticeship?
Thanks, Elliot. You have to look at it as a triangular relationship. At the top of the triangle, you have what I call the apprentice. Regardless of whether that's a new apprentice that you've just appointed, or whether, as Mark just said, it's an existing member of staff. That's at the top of the pyramid. In the other two points of the pyramid is the employer. The employer has a huge role here. George mentioned it earlier, mentor. The apprentice can't just do this on their own. You'll have a specific program of learning, etc. But you cannot have it where the line manager then starts not allowing the person the time to go and undertake the studying, to do the work, to do their investigation, to do their research. So you've got to make sure the employer is absolutely on board with this and is supporting. And obviously the third part of the relationship is the training provider. So the employer has got to choose the right partner as their training provider and making sure they're absolutely dedicated to excellence in delivery. This case of, we've all seen the scandals, etc., of, training providers just taking the mighty dollar from the government and not delivering. But that relationship is absolutely key. And I think George is a good evidence of this, where he's had a good relationship with his training provider. His employer is absolutely supporting him. And here you have a fabulous young man who's developing up through the career in FM. So that to me is what a good apprenticeship looks like. And I think, and I'll mention it here, the challenge has been, particularly over the last 2 years, and we don't know what the future looks like. I mean, I hate using the word, but hybrid working, because if you're going to bring in what I call young apprentices, how are they going to get a really good experience if they're coming into a workplace and hardly anybody's there because everybody's working from home? So companies have got to start looking at this. I'm doing it myself in my own institute, where people say, "Oh, I want an apprentice." I said, "Are you going to be in the office 5 days a week?" No. I said, "How's it going to work then?" Because George will probably, say himself, you've got to have that access to other people to understand how businesses work, how the organisation you work for, how it all comes together. Nobody just sits there in a siloed way and just does a job, etc. For it to be rich, you've got to have access to the whole organisation to embed yourself in the culture of that organisation. So businesses got to think about that going forward. If we're going to encourage the next level of apprentices, technology is fantastic. Don't get me wrong; it's enabled us all to keep together and to see each other. But there is no replacement for people being together physically. So that's that triangular relationship: the apprentice number one, the employer number one, and the training provider number one. And there you have it. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Linda. There's definitely some points there around the pandemic, hybrid working, and obviously the impact that has on apprentices. And yeah, I completely agree that, you know, we need to be, you know, with the apprentices in the office, not kind of leaving them at arm's length. So they do need that constant support, you know, to develop their own learning and make sure that they're just not left to their own device. George, you've mentioned that, you know, you've been an apprentice since 2017. You're coming up kind of towards the end of your apprenticeship now. In terms of, you know, the 3-4 years that you've been doing your apprenticeship, what are the highlights for you with regards to your apprenticeship? You know, what have you really enjoyed?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've worked on some very large tenders and projects that have been very in-depth and have really complemented the learning in terms of the assignments and the projects that the IWFM, the apprenticeship, gives you. But I think moreover than them, it's also that I've been able to see the progression in myself, because the level 3 apprenticeship gave me the grounding and the level 4 has enhanced it. So I've been able to see the development in myself. And that has then been combined with what Nomura have done with me, because as I've been seeing myself improve, the level of responsibility I've been given has also increased. So you can really see where I'm improving, that they're actually taking note and going, right, it's time to give him some more responsibility now.
Brilliant. Thank you, George. And I understand that Nomura have also offered you a rollout position, which is great. But what advice would you give to someone who is thinking of starting an apprenticeship?
There's actually a point that Linda just touched on, which was the employer. When you take on an apprentice, you have to give them 20% of their working week as off-the-job training, and the apprentice has to evidence that as they go through their apprenticeship. Really utilising that day a week in order to improve your development, whether it's working on your assignments or going on additional courses, or just doing research, is vitally important, because the assignments that you're given, especially at level 4, they are very difficult. I found they've been tough, but by using the 20% off the job training, I've been able to improve my ability to get through them. And then I think the other bit of advice I would give is to really utilise support from your colleagues and from the colleges. So I've been in contact with my apprenticeship provider near enough weekly when it comes to some of my assignments. The ones I've struggled with a little bit more, because they've been able to give me the feedback in the same way. I'm really lucky that we're part of a large team here at Nomura. So if I've had any issues with for example, a health and safety assignment, I've just gone and booked in a meeting for an hour with our health and safety manager, and he's been able to give me some advice. So I think that's something that prospective apprentices should be aware of and really make the most of.
Brilliant, thank you, George. Ed, how has a structured learning programme supported your entry into FM?
So my kind of story is that I'm probably one of the many that kind of fell into FM, really. I did it whilst I was trying to decide what I was going to do for a career. I probably didn't at that stage, and we're talking a few years ago now, but didn't at that stage necessarily see it as a career choice. So I think by the time I actually woke up and went, do you know what, this could be a really valuable career, it was then the structured learning programs that enabled me to I guess fast forward or push my career forward. And at a couple of points the others have picked up on are really important in that. I mean, I did an industrial design degree, so it's kind of a completely different thing, but even that degree was structured. We had some time out in industry, but what that didn't give me was an understanding of how businesses work. And Linda mentioned that earlier, and that is something that coming into certainly FM, especially when you are in an industry that supports so many other business functions, is I think really critical. So I think the structured learning courses I did, so really the two significant ones were at Compass Group, where I was earlier in my career. And I think nowadays, the interesting thing about those programs at the time, one was called Evolve and one was the Sales Academy, which gave me my conversion into the world of sales. nowadays they would probably be delivered under an apprenticeship, umbrella, or as an apprenticeship. So like I said earlier, I think organisations, especially large organisations like Compass, and as Linda pointed out, not everyone's a levy payer, but certainly the levy payers have kind of had this impetus to use or to use apprenticeships really to replace some of their courses, and therefore give the learners an opportunity to have a more recognised qualification. And I think structured learning for me, the other thing it kind of gave me is that employers, so you can be very experienced, you can have, a wonderful track record of experience, a really strong CV, but until you've done a structured learning course, employers aren't sure that you've had to apply, you've had to be through a rigorous selection process, and it's been structured effectively. So they don't quite get, and I found when I was leaving Compass and looking for jobs out there, just the very fact I'd been through these courses at such a significant organisation, some of the interviews are really easy. People were just like, yeah, tick. We know you're going to be able to do a fantastic job because we know you'll have had that grounding. So yeah, I think they're really important. I think nowadays, I would encourage anyone to look at an apprenticeship for the similar reasons that I looked at those courses when I was up and coming as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. Linda, how would you advise those doing an apprenticeship to connect better with the IWFM and the training that the IWFM offers?
And so the first thing I would point out, just to make absolutely crystal clear, is that IWFM does not offer training on the apprenticeship programme. We're not a training provider for apprenticeships. I thought just to sort of make absolute clarity on that. However, as a professional body, what we do for anybody who is registered with any of the recognised centres to deliver the apprenticeships, we do offer a study and membership to those individuals, and we don't charge them for that study and membership. It's free for 1 year. And obviously what we try and encourage them to do, I think George alluded to it earlier, and Mark did, the Institute provides a rich array of insights, content, GPGs, research papers, webinars such as this, but on sort of technical aspects, etc. So encourage people to learn, because yes, you will have structured programs of learning for an apprenticeship, but you have got, everybody, not just apprentices, have got to have that humble inquiring mind. You've got to have a nature of continual learning. I always say to young people that when they leave school, they go, "Oh, thank goodness for that, it's over." I'm thinking, it's only just started. You have to continually learn throughout your whole career. Otherwise, you're dead in the water. And it's as simple as that. So we do offer, we've got GPGs, and then, and fingers crossed, and I know Michelle will certainly want to hear this, we're hoping that this year, pandemic, disappearing into the distant past, that networking opportunities would arise as well. We have got a fantastic network of regions and our special interest groups, so that wherever an individual is or whatever interest they have, they'll have an opportunity to sort of go and network with their peers. And that is also a great learning opportunity, because sometimes, don't be isolated. Go and speak to other people. If George goes to an event, he would talk to somebody who might work in the creative industries. And you think, oh, okay, then so FM in the creative industry, well, it's quite a bit different to what it is in an international bank, etc. But your roles, you're doing the same role, but in a different industry, you'd learn from that. Keep up to date with, obviously, we have Facilitate News every day. We have IWFM News. So that's how we support our apprenticeships, and obviously with a view to convert them into what I call professional members, so that they sort of take their career seriously, because quite often when you look at job adverts, one of the requirements is they are a professional member of the Institute, as you would expect if it was an accountant, as you're expected if you're a lawyer, as you're expected if you're a chartered surveyor. You would want that person to know that they are part of their professional body. So that is how we support them, Elliot.
Thank you very much, Linda. I've definitely found that the resources on the IWFM website are definitely something to have a look at. And obviously, I'd encourage everybody to kind of get involved in the networking events that are out there. And you can find kind of local events listed on the IWFM website as well, and via some of the emails from the IWFM that might pop into your mailbox also. So thank you very much, Linda. George, has the content provided by IWFM helped you in any way?
Massively. So the way that the apprenticeships are set up is the first assignment you do is basically an overview of facilities management. So you go through all the sort of the basic things that you would come to expect. Now, for me coming in as a brand new hire, not having done a day in facilities in my life, that meant that as I'm sitting through various meetings and just hearing things throughout the office, all of a sudden, all the dots are starting filling. Brilliant. And then after you've done the overview assignment, you then go on to things such as FM strategy, health and safety, financial management, people management, compliance, and so many more, depending on what yourself and your training provider pick out of the list of assignments that you can do. There's a couple of examples I've actually got. The first one is, well, the two mainly procurement-based ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Throughout the pandemic, obviously there's a lot of people that, or a lot of companies, sorry, that have had to fold out of their contracts, and they've used a force majeure. Now, having done the procurement assignments, when those terms are getting used in the office, I know exactly what it means, where some of my colleagues didn't. So I think that's a good example of the learning that you do in the assignments is beneficial to your journey within FM.
Thank you very much, George. Ed, would you like to see apprenticeships be more widely talked about in contract discussions?
Yes, I think yes is the answer. I think talked about in the right way, though, is important to note. And again, I think we should make a distinction between levy payers and non-levy payers, and really about what the levy's about. I suppose that maybe the cynic in me thinks that the levy could be seen by clients as a pot of money to access. And, you know, linked to the question earlier of how many apprentices and stuff, you know, see it as a kind of way of achieving their own learning goals by using their subcontractors kind of funds. That I don't think would be particularly positive, but I think generally speaking, a discussion about skills, as Mark said right at the top of the session, you know, the skills requirements and the skills gaps in our industry, apprenticeships are probably the key way of addressing those. So a discussion about skills and about pushing skills within the workforce, I think, is always very valuable at contracting stage. And I think, you know, as I said earlier, feeding to the social value piece, you know, that is absolutely key nowadays. I think, you know, as a society, we've kind of woken up to the fact that, you know, off the back of the Carillion disaster, you know, it can't be a race to the bottom, the subcontracting model, and it has to build in social value. One of today's absolutely, you know, and we're seeing this come through very heavily. One of today's real challenges is, of course, net zero and the climate challenges. Apprenticeships are another excellent way to deal with these by giving the people coming into the workforce the right grounding in how to address the sustainability challenges we all face. So yeah, I think absolutely, not as a pound sign thing, but I think as an open discussion about how we should address skills gaps and improve our ability to tackle the challenges of the future, then apprenticeships have a really key part.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. So you may have seen through the chat function, we're just coming to the end of our question set. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, then please do drop them in the into the chat so that we can get some questions from you out there. Next question is actually for Mark. Why should businesses embrace apprenticeships more?
Thanks, Elliot. I suppose I'm preaching to the converted probably for most of the people on this call. I suppose a lot of people will know of the benefits, and we've heard about them really. I just want to throw some stats at you first of all in answer to that question really, and this is from the government's own apprenticeship website. So We talk about benefits to organisations of being involved in these schemes and taking people on and developing people through apprenticeship schemes. 86% of employers said apprenticeships help them to develop skills relevant to their organisation, which I'll come on to in a second really. 78% of employers said apprenticeships help them to improve productivity. And then finally, 74% of employers said apprenticeships help them improve the quality of their product or service. So those are high percentages extolling the benefits of the whole apprenticeship schemes. And I suppose in terms of the overall benefits to an organisation of being involved in apprenticeship schemes, there's a few I've kind of jotted down here really. It's the fact that the qualification and the training that it provides is very relevant and tailored to what organisations need, and that is fundamentally so important to these organisations really, that people are contributing at a very early stage of the apprenticeships to overall business performance. The studies have shown that it also helps in terms of retention, and going back to what Linda was saying about this, and I've mentioned it earlier, such a focus for not just the FM industry, but the UK economy at the moment about talent retention. And a key part of that is investing in people's development and encouraging them to go down that route. And apprenticeships, we get rid of this thinking that it's for 16-year-olds, that it's the workforce and it's out there and it's an opportunity to develop those, and it can impact them on high retention rates. That feeds through obviously then to the lowest recruitment costs, because you're not needing to necessarily be involved in as much kind of new retention, new attraction of people, but also those associated costs could be less. And I suppose the other thing as well is that for organisations, it's investment in the future of their business, because they're bringing through talented people that will be there if they get it right, that are going to be there for a period of time, that are going to significantly impact on the performance of the organisation as well. And it just offers that opportunity to expand and upskill the workforce. So there are a lot of benefits. And as I said right at the start, I'm preaching to the converted, but I think most people now have come to the realisation that the views of apprenticeships of old, of being just an opportunity to get some cheap resources into organisations without anything at the end of it, isn't there anymore. 75% of those apprenticeships are leading to full-time positions. And it's helping for those that don't, with some really good skills that they can bring into the future labour market anyway. The benefits just are clearly there to be seen, and to be fair, probably as well, as we know, have been evidenced on the conversation we've had this lunchtime.
Thank you, Mark. So we've got a bit of a question that I'm going to ask. Probably Mark, Ed, and George. Do you have any final words of guidance or advice for those entering or coming out of an apprenticeship? Can I start with Ed, if possible, please?
Yeah, I think keep it simple, do it. I think it's a bona fide and reliable route into a career. I think some of the advantages, as I say, that mean a lot to me personally, that I've picked upon is it's much more practical, gives you a much better grounding in how businesses work. Exposure to senior people, which when I came into the industry, I kind of had to fight for. But as George has said, being aligned to mentors that are senior people and can show you what skills you will need and potentially help you map out the career pathway at a young age would be, or as I say, any age is really valuable. I think, the most resounding thing is if I had my time again with my career journey, or if I was advising my child or a friend, I would definitely say consider an apprenticeship over a degree, because I think it gives you a better grounding in all the skills you need rather than just more academic-based skills.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. And the same question to George.
I think I've got to echo really what Ed's just said. If you're going into an apprenticeship, I think the main bit of advice I can give is to really make the most of being in the workplace. And gaining experience from the people around you. Obviously, if you go to university, you're not going to have, the courses that you're doing, you're not going to be directly working on those subjects. So I think for me, that'd be the biggest bit of advice, is definitely make the most of being in the work environment.
Thank you, George. And Mark, over to you.
Yeah, just briefly in terms of that, I suppose for those that are going into apprenticeships, echoing what just been said by Ed and George, really, it's a great way to gain industry specific experience and knowledge and skills that is really kind of practicable at a very, very early stage of their careers. I suppose for coming out of those that are coming out of the apprenticeships, as we've said before as well, is that it doesn't stop. That learning and development doesn't stop, and particularly with IWFM is, you know, you've got the opportunities then to gain those professional qualifications and to develop your career. And I think from an employer's point of view, it's so important that they encourage and support people. From a practical experience here at Thompson FM, we recently recruited somebody last year that started level 4 qualification with IWFM, and her employers kind of just lost interest and support in doing it, and it was really difficult for her. And when she came to interview for her with us, you know, one of the first questions she said was, "Will you support me through that, through picking it level 4 again?" And the answer was kind of unequivocally, absolutely. You know, we'll support you throughout in terms of getting that qualification, and that's what we should be looking at. The apprenticeship stops, then how do you professionally develop that continue that journey of learning and understanding and develop professionally? And I think that's where the Institute plays such a crucial role in taking that journey further post apprenticeships, really.
Thank you very much, Mark. And following on from Mark, final question is over to Linda. As the CEO of IWFM and someone who has always promoted apprenticeships, what would your advice be to all our communities listening and watching today on apprenticeships?
Thanks, Elliot. Right, advice. If you're an employer, make sure that you're maximising your opportunities if you're a levy paying employer. If you are not a levy paying employer, see this as an opportunity to develop those skills that you are going to need in your business. Every single business out there needs to have a talent management strategy, and apprenticeships must be part of it. The other thing I would say to all employers, if you are looking to bring on an apprentice, regardless of the levy, make sure that you ask yourself that moral question as to whether or not you should actually be paying a decent living wage and not the apprenticeship salary, which I think is not right. It's not just. When you look at it, I think this is what deters a lot of young people going into apprenticeships, and they look at what they're potentially going to earn, which is below minimum wage. That is not acceptable. As an employer, we always pay at least living wage for any apprenticeship, because I don't like to think that young people are coming into apprenticeships and being used fundamentally as slave labour. Which is what it can be seen as in some organisations. I haven't experienced that in FM, I have to say, but that, you know, in wider parts of society, I know that it has been abused by some organisations. So I think, and also just the myth that a lot of companies, a lot of line managers, finance directors say, well, why should we sort of bother paying any money on developing as staff? It's a waste of money, because as soon as you develop them, they walk out the door. It's not a waste of money, because also I have a person here on screen who's not actually on screen, is Nicole, who's running this whole show for us today. I did forewarn her that I might embarrass her by mentioning her during the webinar. Nicole came to us 9 years ago as a level 2 apprenticeship. She left school, was working in a retail sector, but joined us as a business administrative level 2 apprentice. And I think one of my proudest moments was the day that she told me that she had got her degree apprenticeship through OU. And yes, I know Nicole was leaving us and she's going to work for the NHS in not as a surgeon, I hasten to add, but on the sort of non-clinical side. I am so proud knowing that we as an institute have supported Nicole for those 9 years, and I'm putting out there in the pool of people a highly competent, highly confident, highly qualified young lady, and that is what we have a moral responsibility to do. It's not about, you know, not spending money on developing people. A company has a moral duty to do that, so the people you recruit should be competent and qualified, and then we all help each other, and that is what will help the economy. I think when we talk about productivity, I think it's because of I'm talking about over the last 50 years, industries, you know, all companies have not really taken training seriously. They've only sort of trained and qualified the people that have actually had to, rather than looking across all the piece, all the people, all the functions, and making sure that people have developed themselves so that they can be the best version of themselves. So I think that's my final comment. I think, Elliot, I think it's over to questions now. Michelle?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda. And it's great to see that the IWFM are leading by example as well in terms of the apprenticeship in the office there. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle for final questions. So thanks to those that have submitted your questions. We'll get through just a few of them. If we don't get through them all, it's just, you know, it's something that we might be able to follow up with you following the session.
So again, just to echo, thank you so much for everyone's input today. You know, it's hugely valuable. You know, myself in my career as, you know, an employment service for many people within FM, and also, you know, those looking to recruit valuable team members, you know, that the apprenticeship scheme is so valuable and essential for our industry and taking it forward. So thank you again. So again, we've got a little bit of time to answer some questions. So I'd like to take Jason Kerr's question. Most apprenticeships seem to be targeted to the younger population. Would love the panel's thoughts on the benefits of taking on older applicants. What's the opinion of industry in FM and broadly apprenticeships in general? So this is to the panel. So if we could start with you, Ed.
Yeah, look, I think as I mentioned age a couple of times, I think that's less true, Jason. If I can be honest now, that apprenticeships I think very much were targeted at the younger population and may still be, but definitely as an older learner, there are lots of opportunities out there, and I think you're not made to feel like, you know, maybe the opportunities aren't for you. So I think it is one of the most valuable developments of the apprenticeship scheme. That, you know, as I say, they definitely were the mainstay of young people, but now I think they do genuinely work at all levels.
And George?
I completely agree with what Ed's just said. I think the entirety of my cohort on the level 4 apprenticeship were all sort of workers from one of the big property management companies that were upskilling rather than new entry-level employees.
And Mark?
Thanks, Michelle. I suppose the one thing I would mention really is the fact that historically we always write people off within the UK economy. They're too old to retrain, or, you know, they reach a certain age and you know, they're counting the days down to retirement. For those of us that anticipate that we're going to be working for quite a considerable period of time, and early retirement isn't an option really. It is important that we understand and encourage people, whether they want a career change or whether they want to go in a different direction from their existing role. And I think it's a really good point Jason made, and it's all about perception, and it goes back to what we've been saying a lot during this conversation, that apprentices it isn't about necessarily young people. We have a role to play within the industry of encouraging young people into the industry, for sure, and that starts at the secondary schools, and that's what we're trying to do at the moment. But I think if we look at it, a wider industry aspect as well, is the fact a key driver is to really promote equity, diversity and inclusion within the profession. And to do that, we need to kind of just stop putting kind of barriers up, but look at the wider economy out there and wider opportunities, and to see how we can attract different people within the FM profession, for example, and how that can be achieved through apprenticeships. So I think it's a really good point, Jason, that I think it's just changing people's perceptions and language that we're using to say, well, actually, no, we can look at a broader sense of our workforce and what opportunities to develop and reskill and move into different directions, and how apprenticeships can really drive that forward. And
thank you, Mark. And Linda?
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, great question, Jason. 2 points. It reminds me of a debate which we had many years ago when we were developing the apprenticeships, because we always said that it should be for all people at all ages. Because the trouble is, you know, I think it was Ed who said it, you know, right at the beginning, you know, an apprentice, and everything's, oh, you're going to hairdressing, or you're going to sort of become a bricklayer. And you straight away think of those young people not going down the academic route, not going to university. Oh, therefore, what else are they going to do? Are they going to become an apprentice? And in some ways, there was like a derogatory term, you know, this apprenticeship, if you're going to have it at all levels. And it's a case of, well, but we couldn't find another word. You know, we were trying to find another word which would encapsulate what it is without calling it an apprenticeship. Well, obviously, we were not very creative because we couldn't think of anything. So that's why we stuck with apprenticeships. But I think gradually we are losing that that feel that it is just for newcomers, because, and going back to what Mark said about equity, diversity and inclusion, etc., you cannot discriminate for people who are over a certain age. You know, I was working with an organisation which is looking at people who are, you know, over 50s, and they have been completely sidelined from recruitment opportunities and apprenticeships. I know somebody who's past their retirement age who has just been accepted onto an apprenticeship, and it's absolutely right and appropriate, because who is anybody there to say when somebody should stop working, should stop developing? You know, we want a really active, vibrant society, and that includes including everybody and developing their opportunities to have a fulfilled life, whether they're working or apprenticeship, whatever they're doing. So hopefully that's answered the question, but I do think that myth of an apprentice being a young person straight from school, it is gradually diminishing because of the various levels now of apprenticeships.
Thank you, Linda. And hopefully, Jason, that's answered your question. Just to really emphasize that, you know, there are opportunities ongoing for everybody, and especially within facilities management. So unfortunately, that is all we have time for on the question and answer session, but please continue to send your questions through, and the committee at Rising FMs will be back in touch to answer those questions. So yeah, just to roll on to the CPD number for today's event, should it be relevant for anyone listening in today. The number is 998 2172. Again, that's 998 2172. And we would also like to talk a little bit about the event that we've got coming up. So for those that aren't familiar with Rising FMs, we're a special interest group that work on behalf of IWFM, and we really are here to raise awareness for those coming into the industry, to support them through networking and, you know, guidance, give them advice, and just generally being that go-to support network for those coming into the industry. So 2022 for us is really exciting time. You know, we've got an event coming up in May. So following the facilities show, we're going to have an event on May the 18th, and this will be at the Novotel Hotel, which is literally just opposite the Excel. And we'll be having a networking event. Now, the venue can host up to 200 people. So we really hope that, you know, those that are listening today are able to make that event, and there'll be more information about that on the IWFM website. And by all means, contact us, the team, on LinkedIn should you need any further information. And also, Rising FMs are working with a school in East London where basically 250 students were not able to take part in mock interviews, which is something that they've had year on year for all of the students. But because of COVID, unfortunately, that didn't look like it was going to happen. So Rising FMs have stepped forward and we've offered to manage that process. But we do have limited resources, so we are looking for volunteers to help us in that process. It would be a case of giving us a morning, so approximately 9 till 12, and this will be focused on Careers Week. So from the 7th to the 11th of March, if you have any availability, if you're able to give us a couple of hours of your time, we would really appreciate it. And again, please feel free to contact me via LinkedIn or any of our members, committee members, and we would be delighted to have your support in that particular event. And also following on from that, we've got other IWFM opportunities. So we just wait for the next slide. In the FM community to take part in the Outlook survey. So if you can take a few minutes to complete this Outlook survey, it really does make a huge difference and would really appreciate your time again. So please log on to the IWFM website for further information about that. We also have a new podcast offering, and the first series is working in partnership with Sodexo. So we're really excited to offer that opportunity to anyone within the FM network. It's going to be focusing initially on workplace wellbeing, and it's split into 4 episodes. Again, please log on to the IWFM website for further information about that. And we also have the Impact Awards. So an amazing event, and deadline for any applications is the 1st of April. So if you want to find out more information about this, it will be on www.iwfmawards.org. So please log on to put your entries in. And again, it's so important that we highlight change and development and innovations and success stories. So please give a little bit on that side, just to make sure that we're all aware of what's happening within the industry. So we look forward to the awards ceremony. And again, it's just really to thank everybody for today's input. It's hugely valuable. We need to support those coming into the industry, and we need to shine the light on any challenges and experiences or success stories that we've had within FM, and really help to maintain that reputation of having FM as a career of choice. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being part of this event, and Rising FMs look forward to seeing you in May, hopefully. Thank you very much.